Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Maine Take. My name is Dana Connors. I'm pleased to be the host of a program brought to you by the Maine State Chamber of Commerce. And each week, with the help of our guests, we take a look at some of the issues, ideas, and initiatives at work in our state, helping people understand better how they affect your lives, your livelihood, and if possible, help to move our economy forward. Well, today, with the help of our guest, who happens to be an employee of the State Chamber of Commerce, we're going to take a look at an issue that is on the front page or on the 6 o'clock news quite frequently, as a matter of fact. It's polyfluoroalkyl. We know it as PFAS, or that forever chemical, because in fact, I guess that's how it's properly labeled by many. It actually saw its presence in the 1930s, and we recognize it today as a family of 9,000 man-made different chemical compounds. It's in and a part of everyday household products: cleaners, leather, paper, paint, firefighting materials, as well as insulation on wires. And it's from everything, as we've read in the media recently, from t-shirts to automobiles, and yes, even your cell phone. One could say it's just about everything that's impacted by this chemical compound. Well, it came into our lives more vividly when a number of farmers who were using sludge as a fertilizer found that their property was being contaminated. The legislature took up the call, and a bill was passed in 2021 with a goal that we would eliminate, there would be a ban on any PFAS in products by 2030. So Ben is actually our senior government relations specialist, whose responsibility, among other things, is to look out and provide leadership on this issue for the business community. And that clearly is what he has done to date. And we're going to talk with him about the issues, where we stand today, what we can look forward to, and what some of the issues surrounding this particular challenge to be. So Ben, welcome to the show. I saw you a few minutes ago, so it's not like you're a stranger to me or to the show, but I am pleased very much that you're on here to help us speak to the issue and perhaps to better understanding where our concern comes from. We have no concern, no opposition to the need to deal with this issue. Our issue is more about process than it is the product, as one would say. So let's begin, and let's start our conversation by separating the PFAS challenge into that which we experienced that brought us to this point, which is the farming community, the impact we also saw there, but also starting to see it in some water and drinking water. And then we'll switch over to the issue that we find ourselves in the middle of, and that is the testing and reporting. So talk to us about the farming aspects of it, what we're doing. Are we doing things to help address that?
Yeah, thanks, Dana. And it's great to be on the show with you today. I always think it's really important to provide a certain amount of, historical context about where we are today and sort of how we got here. And as you, laid out, very well in your opening remarks, I mean, PFAS is it's a family of thousands of different chemical compounds, which really have been around, since the 1930s. What kind of happened, which got us to the point of where we are now is, in the 70s and 80s, these PFAS, forever chemicals, which are, virtually impossible to break down. We started using them as fertilizer, and it really caused a lot of, negative impacts to the farming community in Maine, both, on the health front and on the financial front. And, we have seen a lot of progress made. We really, since 2019, I would say, PFAS has been a pretty prominent policy conversation over at the State House in Augusta, and it started to work its way down to the nation's capital in Washington, D.C. We have been engaged in a number of those policy conversations from the Chamber of Commerce perspective. Our position has been, remarkably, consistent. It's important to be involved in the policy conversations, which help find a solution to the, truly heartbreaking stories that we have heard from the farmers who have, stepped forward and have told their story about how they have been impacted. But it's also important that we are enacting policy in a way which does not significantly, impact or hurt our businesses in Maine and their ability to manufacture, compete, make products which can be offered, for sale in a competitive global and regional economy. So I think it's, always important to make the distinction that, we are going to be involved in these conversations, these policy conversations moving forward. We have been from now, and we truly do want to work, to find a solution. As you mentioned, there has been a lot of efforts focused towards the farming community in Maine. We have seen a federal, congressional delegation that is, united on putting forward more resources, to help those communities that have been impacted. We've seen both gubernatorial candidates on the campaign trail talk about the need, to address this issue and the farmers who have been impacted. And I think that's an important distinction to make. What we're talking about, from the Chamber of Commerce perspective is a law that was implemented, enacted by the legislature. It went into law without the signature of Governor Mills, which is a ban of PFAS in product, intentionally added PFAS in products for sale in Maine by the year 2030. But I think, even more pressing and really problematic, and really where we spend a lot of our time and effort is on the reporting and testing that is required for the department by January 1st.
Yeah, let's hold your thought on that point, because I want to set that up, and only in this to say this is that, once again, as you very ably has stated, it's not that we're trying to defeat a proposal. We're not trying to stop what's being done, because the need in terms of the health implications are very clear. Our focus today, more than anything else, is wanting to meet that goal of 2030, but also take into account what is expected of the testing and the reporting by the end of this year. So expand upon that. What is the issue when it comes to trying to comply with a date when the regulations, I guess I'm speaking to my own question here, but why don't you take that from there and indicate what that problem is in terms of time, but also the hope for success as to what's being proposed.
Yeah, certainly. Well, and I think, to put it in context too, I think, the impact of when, Maine passed this law was far, broader than I think anyone ever anticipated when it passed. It passed the legislature in, July of 2021. When it passed, there was rulemaking that was added to this law to have the department and the Board of Environmental Protection undergo a thorough and comprehensive rulemaking process to give companies and businesses in Maine, the rules and guidelines for what is needed to comply. This law is scheduled to go into effect on January 1st of 2023. Yet we are in November of 2022, and the official rulemaking proceedings have still not began. We don't anticipate that a rule is going to be adopted on this law until April or May of 2023 at the earliest. So really, we are in a bit of an unprecedented period where we have a law that is scheduled to go into effect, yet the rules which companies are looking for, to give guidance, to be able to report this information, that process, has not even begun. And I don't, fault the department for not beginning that proceedings yet. As I just mentioned, the way that this law was written, some of the definitions they used for manufacturer, product component, we have realized over time that this is truly impacted way more industries and companies and businesses of all sizes and sectors of the economy in Maine. So we are simply kind of stepping forward and saying we just need more time. We need to give the business community in Maine the time to process and understand what is expected of them in this compliance. Testing, it's going to take a incredible amount of time. I mean, we have heard from some of our members here that just testing for this is going to take them 2 to 3 years. They have to work with up and downstream suppliers. Some companies that manufacture products right here in Maine, they work with, in some cases, 5,000 to 10,000 different suppliers. They have to take time to go through working with all those suppliers, figuring out what's in their products, and then be able to test it and report it to the department. So, this is there's no other law like this anyplace else in the entire country. This is truly a first in the nation type policy, and the department is taking their time to figure out how they are going to be able to implement this. And we are just looking at, giving the business community in Maine the predictability and certainty that they need from a regulatory aspect.
Yeah, let's expand a bit on that, because you are very correct when you described it as, now that the law is passed and the department has been handed over the responsibilities that go with it, you immediately begin to acknowledge the complexity of trying to accomplish it, the confusing nature that can take place, but the element of time to do it right is very apparent. You also mentioned, and it's very true, that the commissioner and the Department of Environmental Protection has listened. They understand the issue and have responded. You want to share with our viewers what that response has been?
Yeah, certainly. And there's been a lot of, press recently about, the department has found themselves in a position where they are issuing, extensions to companies to be able to, to give them the time to further understand what is needed from them. That's certainly something that we have been advocating for. Again, giving companies in Maine time to understand, frankly, get more awareness about this law. This is, it's one of our bigger challenges. The chamber is helping spread awareness about this law, because it does have an impact on every business and every size from all different makeups of the economy. So, the department has understood, the difficult position that this has put, the business community in Maine in. For that, they have, deemed it necessary. And to be clear, the department's not doing anything out of the norm. The legislature put language in this bill that allowed the department to issue case-by-case individual extensions for companies if more time is deemed necessary for those companies to be able to, to present that information to the department. So they are doing what is statutorily required of them and what they are in their powers to do. They are extensions that need to be done on a case-by-case basis. Individual companies need to apply. The department will review those extension requests to see if they are deemed necessary. And to date, the department has issued well over 1,000 different extension requests. And if you go and look at the list that is publicly available on the department's website, it shows you how broad and how complex this law is. When you see the type of businesses who have applied for extensions, the different economic sectors that they represent, the different sizes of those type of companies. And I fully anticipate that will continue to grow and expand as more companies become aware of this law.
Yeah, there's always, because it is confusing, it is complex, and people want to do what's right, but it does take time. What would be the risk to a company that either intentionally or just didn't realize that they were impacted by this law? What would be the consequence or the risk that they would face if they didn't comply?
Yeah, that's a great question, Dana. And frankly, it's a pretty significant, failure to comply that would be put forward on the business community, as it is stated in the latest version of the concept draft of the rule. If you have not filed for an extension by January 1st of 2023, you are subject to report this information to the department. If you are not able to comply, if you are not able to report that information, and you don't have an extension, it says cut and dry that your product cannot be offered for sale in the state of Maine if you have not reported that information, to the department. So that's a pretty significant, penalty if you think about it. In the world that we're living in today, where there are serious, global supply chain issues in Maine and across the entire country. To think that a company could be in a position where they are no longer able to offer their product for sale in Maine because they cannot comply with this broad nature of a law that has been impacted and pushed onto the department from the legislature to now try and implement it. To me, that's a pretty significant penalty that a company could face, and it's frankly why we are encouraging a lot of our members to apply for an extension. That's not applying for an extension is not an admission of guilt in any capacity. It's simply just saying we need more time to be able to understand what is being asked of us from the department and how we are able to comply with this law. And frankly, if we are going to be able to be in compliance.
Another issue that I find is created some confusion. I even read about it in an article that the Bangor Daily News had today. And that is the issue, does it really apply to me? I'm in manufacturing, but I just assemble things and then send it out. Help our viewers understand the key to how it does affect you or when it affects you. I know there's a key. Share that with us. I think it's the way it is, defined in the rule, the way that they define, manufacturer, product, product component, there's language in there that says, regardless of whether the manufacturer of the product is the manufacturer of the product component or not, to me, and I think the department and other, folks that we have talked to would agree that, this has an impact on everyone that has a product that's offered for sale in the state of Maine, that manufactures something in Maine, that manufactures a product outside of the state of Maine, but it is then sold into the Maine marketplace. If you manufacture something in Maine, but you get parts from it that are shipped to you from a facility that might be, outside of the state of Maine, the way they have defined, some of the different definitions in this rule show that it truly does have an impact on every business. One thing we haven't touched on here today, but I think, the people who in the businesses who are going to be most negatively impacted by this are our small businesses in Maine. Right.
Our small businesses in Maine are impacted by this law. If they, manufacture a sweatshirt in a downtown store in a coastal community in Maine, if you manufacture, bracelets, you get parts from all these different vendors that you might work with, you are responsible for having to report that information to the department because you have offered it for sale and you have manufactured it at your store. This is going to be very, very problematic and very challenging for our small businesses in Maine to be able to comply with. As we know, 80% of our businesses employ fewer than 20 people, and a lot of those businesses are going to be impacted by this. There are serious cost concerns that are put forward about, how to comply with this law. And, frankly, just the burdensomeness of having to work with their, supply chains to gather all the information that is necessary to then report to the department. The impact on it is frankly quite enormous and does have an impact on all different types of business in Maine.
Let's switch the attention a bit here but keeping with the word impact and its meaning is that we've acknowledged that this issue has been handed one that's broad, is confusing, is complex to the department. And I'm sure that they're not staffed up to be able to do all of the analysis that they're responsible for when the reporting takes place. And in the last couple of weeks, I think we've all been witness to a proposal that would require companies to actually pay a fee for the department to do the evaluation. That too would add a cost to a business, most notably the small business who may not even know they're in the game and affected, but they carry a responsibility. You want to talk a bit about that?
Yeah, I would, because there is a very, very real cost concern that is put forward by this. To start, as a individual company, you are going to be responsible for doing all the testing, all the research, everything to find out what is in your products. We have serious testing capacity constraints all across the country. Just doing the test in their own right is expensive. It's about $500 to $600 to do a lab certified test. You might be having to ship these materials out of state. So there is to begin with, a serious amount of time, resources, and investment that is going to be made from a company's perspective to be able to gather all the information that is necessary to even report it. And then when it comes time to report to the department, in the latest version of this rule, they have announced that there are fees that'll be put forward on companies to report this information to the department. And the fee structure is as follows, which your first 3 items that you report to the department is going to be $250 for each of those 3 items. Every item after that is a $50 additional fee per item. So say you are in a position where you have 1,000 items that you need to report to the department. That is going to cost you for 1,000 items, roughly right around $50,000 just to report. So you have the serious cost constraints of going through all the research that is necessary to test, to find out, to do research, and then the cost that is associated with reporting this information to the department. Now, we believe, and I think we've publicly said this, that is, we aren't arguing the original intent of this legislation, which is an all-out ban on intentionally added PFAS in products by 2030. We really are focusing on our efforts on the difficulties that this reporting requirement has on the business community in Maine. We feel that give the companies the opportunity, give the companies the chance to do their internal research and figure out if there is a way to eliminate PFAS from being in their products, and they can manufacture, their products without PFAS being added, because that's the original goal of what the intent of this legislation is. But putting companies in a position where they need to go through this, very complex, very confusing, very time, sensitive process of finding out what is in all their products, reporting it. They're taking resources away from what could be going to the original intent, which is to eliminate PFAS from their product, just to report this information to the department. We're hearing from companies that are saying, we are looking at ways. We recognize there are negative aspects to PFAS being in our product. We are looking for ways to eliminate these items from our product and see if we can still manufacture them and they can still be as reliable as they are. But this regulatory reporting and testing does nothing to help accomplish that. I mean, we have to remember that what we're talking about here, again, going back to the first part of it, where we're not arguing the farming aspect of this policy conversation. We're talking about intentionally added PFAS, which go into essential everyday and sometimes life-saving products. You're talking about life-saving medication, life-saving medical device, life-saving machines, cars, cell phones, clothing, cooking materials. Like the scope of the amount of products that are impacted by this law, cannot be missed.
A couple other things in the short time we have remaining, I wanted to ask to get out there for at least a better understanding. In certain compounds, chemical compounds, there's an acceptable level that you can experience, and it's acceptable. Has any discussion taken place around PFAS in that regard?
So we have seen from the federal EPA some guidance that has been put forward about applicable amount of exposure when it comes to drinking water or food exposure. To my knowledge, and I'm certainly not a scientist and expert in the science aspect of this at all, but I haven't seen any federal guidance which comes from some of these essential products that we're talking about, if there is any level of exposure, what the true negative health side of it can be. We know that there have been negative connotations that have come from drinking or eating or having these chemicals enter your body, and federal regulators have put forward some type of guidance, at least on that aspect. Yeah. But for what we're really talking about here, there has been no guidance whatsoever, and that's the governor of California just recently vetoed a bill that was very similar to Maine's law, and he cited the reason for his veto was wanting to wait and see when we get some type of guidance from federal EPA on the rest of these products.
That reminded me that Colorado, even though they approached it after we did, have come up with a law that has gone into effect, as I understand it. Can you briefly tell us how that differs from ours, or what that contains that addresses the same issue?
Yeah, I'd say if the Colorado law, it was a significant improvement on Maine's law. The scope of it was much more condensed. There have been some type of exemptions that have been put in place, such as for pharmaceutical medications, which can be, again, life-saving in some cases. So I would say certainly not being knowing that law as well as I do the one in Maine, I think they made improvements and did kind of refine the scope of it a little bit.
Well, it's in the interest of wrapping it up, although there's so much more we could talk about and so much more that in future days and weeks we probably will. I think it bears reminding everybody who may be watching the show today or in the future that our efforts are not in any way to minimize or to get rid of a goal that attempts to remove PFAS from any products by 2030. We accept the intent. We understand the need. What we're concerned about is the process, the time it takes for us to get there. And I know that because of what you said, the risk of perhaps losing companies that are selling products or losing their products that are from out of state that sell in Maine, but also, as you reminded us, the small business structure that we have in our state, the profile is what you said, 80% employ fewer than 20 people. That the impact is broad, and I'm sure that I know that companies are deeply concerned about doing the right thing, but having the time to do it. So Ben, I know that you have had the opportunity to create a coalition representing both those who are doing business in Maine and want to continue to do it, but also those of us in Maine that want to make sure that we comply, but are given time to do it. Let's wrap up with the coalition and perhaps what's next.
Yeah, absolutely. As I mentioned at the outset, I mean, this is a conversation that we feel is critical to continue to remain engaged on, looking ahead to the future, to represent the business community. We are doing a number of things to be able to communicate this to our membership. We have created a internal Maine State Chamber of Commerce PFAS task force, which is made up of a lot of our Maine-based employers who are very concerned about this law. It gives us a way to keep them up to date, answer their questions, help give them the guidance. We also have created a page on our website, Maine State Chamber of Commerce, PFAS, which gives some more information for folks who need it. And we are communicating to our membership through regular channels, through advocacy alerts, through other social media, our newsletters, and we will continue to do that. PFAS is not going to be a policy issue that is going to be going away. When you look ahead to the next legislative session, you look ahead to federal Congress, it's going to remain a prominent policy discussion, and it is critical that we find ways to keep our membership engaged, informed, and get their participation so we can represent their interests and their needs, to policymakers in the state of Maine.
Yes, you're absolutely right about that. And again, I want to thank you on behalf of the State Chamber of Commerce, whether it's our members, whether it's our board. We appreciate the leadership that you individually are expressing and the ability to work with the department, the administration, the legislature is vital. This is an issue that affects all of us. None of us are denying it. We understand the impact it has and the need to do something about it. And what you have presented, we hope clarifies where we do stand. We are asking for time and representing businesses in a way that really allows them to do what needs to be done, but given time to do it in the right way. So Ben, thank you so very much. And I'm very proud of your leadership and what you're doing on behalf of the business community. Thanks again. We'll
Thank
see
you,
in
Dana.
5 minutes. Yeah.
I'll see you when you come down the stairs.
Exactly. Yeah. Boy, the takeaway for this week is pretty fundamental to our state. As a matter of fact, it's an issue that probably touches every state. And of course, as you know, the issue is PFAS. It's taken center stage as a priority issue in our state. It's a priority for good reason, because the adverse health risks that exist and the support is needed, and we do support the effort, no question about that. It affects, and you've read about it, I'm not even going to be able to touch all of the health implications, but it's certainly, it's the liver, it's the thyroid, it's kidney cancer, it's disease immunity, it's so many far-reaching impacts on one's health. It's not to be denied, and surely we hope in no way are people actually feeling that that is our position, to try to deny something that needs to be addressed or to avoid having to comply. As Ben shared with us, we first saw it in our farms and to some degree in our drinking water, but he also pointed out very effectively that our federal government, our state government have stepped in and trying to do what's right, whether that's providing money for action to be taken, whether it's the federal guidelines that help with water. Yes, something is being done and needs to be done. And PFAS in products is also being addressed, but honestly, not without some concerns that you've heard about here today. The chamber, the various trade associations, the businesses in our state have come together. And again, the concern is not about need or importance of dealing with PFAS in products. It's the time it will take to do it right. Testing products for levels of PFAS and reporting results, DEP, by the end of this year is really not reasonable when you consider the regulations were done. But I have to, in time, in fact, in November or October, but in fact, that's not even real any longer. That, by virtue of what the DEP has indicated, that reporting requirement, or the regulations, I should say, and the website to support it will be in April. And they have responded by providing companies an additional 6 months. That's helpful, particularly with what is expected by the thousands of companies and the many thousands of products that they have to really do the testing on and to report accurately and adequately. A companion piece that he spoke out is also a concern, which is a proposed fee requirement of businesses to pay in order to support the actual evaluation by the department. We don't take issue with the fact that the department has a huge responsibility and staffing is probably inadequate. We simply point out that that fee can reach thousands of dollars for a large business, and even a small business, which Maine is primarily made up, is going to be very hurtful. Because this issue, we know it to be broad, we know it to be confusing, and we know that it is very, very complex. So I would ask that you give consideration to the following, that this is an issue that we would respectfully request be taken up at a national level, because we are not the only state faced with PFAS implications. Every state, I believe, will have a similar concern. We've seen Colorado take up the cause in a reasonable way, according to what Ben has shared with us. But until that happens, and even if it happens, and that right back here at home, we are facing responsibilities, once again, that we don't deny. We are simply asking for you to give us the time to do it right. That is extremely important to the success of the effort. And doing it right means giving the time to companies to be able to comply in a way that we all expect. You know, when you stop and think about the vast reach, it's just about everything that we deal with, from t-shirts to automobiles to your cell phone, and all the other products that touches our lives that we take for granted, but not when it comes to PFAS. So we would ask that really we be given the time to do it right, to meet the obligations that this law calls for. And we know that we can do it. And we know that time is available to us, because ultimately it's 2030 when the ban takes place. And we are asking for time to do it right, and to be sure that we're given the time to enable us to meet the tests that are required. That is the takeaway for this week, and we welcome you back in the near future for another episode of the Maine Take. In the meantime, as we close out every show, in a world where you can be anything, be kind to yourself, but also be kind to one another. With that, until I see you again, enjoy this beautiful fall weather. Take care. Bye-bye.